Коллеги,
Dear colleagues, it's 2 p.m. and I suggest we commence our conference. And first of all, I'd like to greet you all. My name is Sergey Alexandrovich Shishkin. I am the Deputy General Director of the Register for Classification and Industrial Supervision. So everything connected with the rules, industrial supervision, documentation supervision is something that I take care of. And I would like to open my welcoming remarks with a quote from a song in Russian, which says, "It's so great that all of us are here together." And of course, in the current COVID-19 situation, at least we at the Register are craving human interaction because Skype, phone conversation, or email cannot replace true human interaction. And this conference is indeed a continuation of what we started in 2016 when we started to gather live events and discussion boards. And we did change quite a lot in our rules based on those events. In the 2 years since our last meeting, we did not stop changing. We tried to update the rules for designing, building, and operating vessels, including fishing vessels. And we introduced challenges to make the life easier or make the rules easier to follow, more streamlined. At this conference, we are going to cover various topics, hear reports by our colleagues and people from the industry, and I'd like to wish all of you great talks and open discussions. We expect really straightforward talk from you, and we will be ready to answer any questions that might arise, either today or maybe we take them with us and then come back with a solution that would make everyone happy. So I'd like to thank you for coming to our conference and now give the floor to Georgy Bedrik, the head of Planning and Marketing Department, to start our conference. Good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to support what Sergey said. We haven't seen each other for a long time, and it's good that we can do so now. And for me, human interaction is the key here. In all of my presentations, I have always focused on the idea that for any classification society, it is shipbuilding that is the focus of operations, and in the changes that are introduced to the shipbuilding industry, it is through these changes that our rules change too. So for us, it is paramount to be on the cutting edge of the trends in engineering and industry, so that we can respond accordingly and implement new rules to ensure reliable cooperation with you and make it possible for you to build safe vessels according to the schedule and build those different types of vessels. And I'd like to say that everything is working all right for us. We have the same number of offices. We don't have fewer employees than before. And we are now really revamping our inspector personnel. We are hiring new professionals and onboarding them. The registrar, as you know, has quite a lot of foreign offices, and the experts there, they come back to Russia, and we have new experts sent there, and thus I can tell you for sure that the register has really a team of expert personnel with experience of supervision in ship construction, both in Russia and abroad. And we are indeed trying to incorporate the best shipbuilding practices, and this is something we plan to continue. Fishing vessels are extremely important for us because 27.1% of vessels registered by us as fishing vessels, and the share of fishing vessels has always been quite high, and I don't expect this trend to change anytime soon. If we come back to new building, these numbers show that right now, for register class, we have 232 vessels being built. It is a large number, big number, and this is the first time we reach this level as Russia. If we compare ourselves with IACS members, we are in the middle in terms of new building, and the difference between us and the leading classifying society, it is not by orders of magnitude, but the difference between us is quite moderate indeed. That's how I'd like to put it. And on the slide, you can see that fishing vessels also represent the highest share of new building, and thus we largely focus on our interaction with the companies and the rules on fishing vessels. And I do hope that our presentation will show that to you. But we can't move forward without hearing from you. So we need feedback and we need dialogue. If you're not telling us anything, we think everything is going all right. Fishing vessels under construction are being constructed in a wide range of locations, most of them in Russia, but we also have orders that are being completed beyond the Russian Federation. And I can responsibly say that we have expert surveyors in all our different offices. So for us, it is quite easy to supervise construction in any part of the world. Well, this slide is what we see. Potential projects, upcoming projects that are now being discussed with the register. There is formal application, and I believe that all of you as market members know even more about it than we do. I think that the number of potential projects is even higher, and we are of course thrilled and quite ready to ensure quality services from us as a classifying society. Why am I talking about it? On our side, we see a lot of potential in fishing fleet construction. This is not something that was a one-time opportunity. I think that we are continuing constructing new ships. We realize that, and this is something that we are preparing to. If we talk about the new services that we now offer, this is a service that the Russian registrar did not really focus on, but now it's something that we do both in fishing and other vessels. It is expert evaluation of construction state. This is something that we do both for the clients and the banks, and I do believe that this is the best technical expertise, independent expertise that can assess construction progress and specification compliance. This is something that we are made for. This is a service that we do have, and it is quite popular. More specifically, if we have a complex construction schedule where a number of shipyards are implementing the project together. And of course, we also focus on the digital transformation. We do realize that this is something that is paramount if we want to really keep up to new international standards. There will be a separate report on that. But what I'd like to say is that we are only at the beginning of this road, and we will talk more about it at the NIVA Expo, where we will have a separate day for us to communicate. But I'd like to reiterate that software development that would make life simpler for both you and us is something that we are focusing on at the registry, and hear your feedback, maybe opportunities for additional digital transformation, additional software development. This feedback is crucial for us, and we are going to continue moving in that direction. To sum up, I'd like to point out a number of things. We have quite a lot of new building. It allowed us to upgrade our rules and to indeed acquire multifaceted experience for our inspectors who interact with you. I think it's a great foundation for us to move forward, but I will cease boasting now and give the floor to the next speakers who will cover some specific things that the Register was able to do. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Georgi. And now I would like to give the floor to Andrei Fasolko, the head of Classification Division, to talk about the changes in the registrar rules and international requirements. Thank you. Okay. Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Dear friends and industry partners, my name is Andrei Fasolko. I am the head of Classification Division, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for our fruitful cooperation with us, for your support of our classification society, and for your patience, of course. Despite the global changes since our last meeting in 2019, connected with the pandemics and the limitations on our interaction, the registrar is building its competences in evaluation of designs of various fishing vessels, and also from the side of theory, we continue to improve the rules for the fishing vessels. And today, of course, I will try to focus on fishing specifically, because it is indeed a fishery forum. Today, I will try to cover the changes that happened in these 2 years, changes in the rules. There aren't a lot of those changes in the rules, but more changes in streamlining the rule base for you, so that it is easier for you to really find the answers to all of your questions, to save time and maybe reallocate that time to designing and constructing your vessels. As Georgi said before, we now have 79 vessels that are being built. In 2019, we had 36, so we have twice as much. We have 16 designs in quite a lot of shipyards, 21 shipyards. 17 of them are in Russia and 4 of them are abroad. And I'd like to recall indeed how the changes to our rules are introduced. Primarily, new rules by IMO, IACS that are connected with our work as a classifying society. The second source of changes is scientific research that is commissioned by us based on the recommendations of our scientific advisory board. The third source is proposals by clients, shipyards, design firms, and other maritime organizations. Your feedback, your proposals based on your rich experience and implementation of these rules. This also includes analysis of the experience of our clients and other classifying societies. And the fourth source is analysis of the deviations from our rules or alternative design solutions. Here an example that I'd like to share is that when designers suggest some ideas that do not fit into our rules, if the designers do indeed provide reasoning for those suggestions, we'll look into those suggestions and do implement them quite quickly. A circulation letter takes from a week to a month, and indeed, while this vessel is being designed, if this proposal is implemented, the deviations cease to be so. So this is something that does happen in practice.
I'd like to describe some details regarding the changes starting from 2019. What are the changes which were introduced in our rules? On this slide, first of all, I would like to demonstrate the changes in the Part 4 of the rule Stability, Classification for Construction of Marine Vessels. We have introduced the changes with respect of flooding of fish holds through the hatches remaining open during fishing operations. What are the changes particularly? In the previous version, there was no exact information related to the requirement to the static stability diagram. In this case, in the newly introduced rules, we have eliminated these details which were not clear, and now the client understands clearly what is it all about. Next slide is about changes in the Part 2, the hull structure. The rule of the 2020, 1239 of this part, we have mentioned that this hull structures with a high level of concentration is exposed to a high level of the static load, and in this rule it was described that category D requirement could be applied, and the category A steel is not allowed, is not acceptable. This requirement is not very clear. The definition was not given what is the condition and which steel can be used. It was not clear, D or E category. So this requirement was not clearly described. Now it is clear and obvious definition, which is given, as you can see from this slide. Next, here we are talking about the changes in the Part 6, fire safety rules. In the rules of 2020, this point that you can see, 21143, did not exist at all. What is this rule about? It is about the introduction of the requirement regarding the surface coating materials. This requirement will increase the amount of combustible materials at least 9 times, and it will increase the number of the amount of such materials in the used for the interior. But it allows to increase the range of the materials that can be used, which you know is quite a complicated point when designing a ship. It is now possible to use the wooden components for railings. Next, 21110 is the number of the point where the changes were introduced. The requirement of this point was related to the non-seagoing vessels in the version of 2020, but when analyzing the demands of the convention, the ships with a length exceeding 24 meters, when we researched this requirement, we realized that this requirement can be applied to the vessels which length is exceeding 40 meters, and as a result, we could increase the range of the materials that can be used. On this slide, with a link to the requirement of the convention, introduction of this rule allows us to increase the safety level. This is related to the pumps, and we can reduce the pressure to prevent the hazardous situation in case of fire on the shipboard. Next slide is describing the changes of the requirements related to the electric equipment. Here we are talking about refrigerating plants and storerooms for refrigerants. You know that cooling agents became popular now. These cooling agents, which are used now, are quite safe from environmental point of view, but still it's quite hazardous for the crew members, for people, and it is from the point of view of fire safety is not that safe as well. It is maybe it's not very clear to everyone, but these rooms, storage rooms, were analyzed, and the cylinders did not comply with all the safety requirements. So now they introduced the changes to the explosion-proof version, and the protection level T1, T2 is applied to this kind of cylinders. Next change related to electric equipment on the basis of the experience of the colleagues from IACS. The register introduced some changes related to the electric energy sources. Especially, it is related to the location of equipment. Point number 1910.8.2, electric equipment which is getting power supply from the source of electric power supply, and the time of operation of electric energy source. This time was reduced. In the past, it was allowed to locate these sources only above the upper deck. Now it's allowed to install this kind of sources lower, so we are now more flexible when working and locating the electric equipment on shipboard. And also talking about the hull structures of the fishing vessels, the rule to split the ship, the rule which is describing the requirement to split the ships on the sections, it's not applied, and there is no demand for such requirement any longer. These kind of requirements were applied in the past to the cargo vessels, and we also had to install separately the emergency accumulators and generators, but now this requirement is not any longer, and safety level remained the same. Operation time requirement, in the past it was 18 hours, and now 6 hours are sufficient for operation in the northern latitudes. And the last points from this slide, 1910.4.2, Cape Town Convention rule was taken into consideration as a basis. Fishing operations. In the past, in our rules, in the previous version, we did not take into consideration the fishing operations for the ships less than 500 tons. Now, irrespective of this capacity, it shall be sufficient for operation and safety of the vessel. And considering this, the safety level was improved. So these are the changes in the rules related to electric equipment. I would like to separately highlight the changes linked to rules, the icing class. In 2019, we have performed huge work, and we have developed a lot of new rules. And we promised that in the nearest time we will complete this work, we will finalize it, and after fishing vessel in 2019, that happened in July, already in August we completed development and correction of such rules. What was changed? Here on this slide you can see. Now the register, one of the last changes, register has a format to define the ice load class. In the past, in the previous version, this form of the hull structure shape was strictly regulated, and there was no flexibility. These new formulas allow us to use, first of all, the bulb shape hose, and these formulas are also very important to define, to calculate the ice load. You know that there are vessels which can move both forward as a classical conventional vessel and with the bow part afterwards. So these are the changes introduced, and one more thing about this slide. All 79 vessels are the ice class vessels, and they have the class from ice 3 to up to ice 1, or some of them have the combined ice class. Next slide. Mechanical equipment. There are changes. We have corrected the requirements to the minimum requirements of the capacity of the engine for ice 2 and ice 3. These rules, when developing the rules of the register, we borrowed these rules from the Swedish and Finnish regulations, and they allow such vessels to enter the ports of the Baltic Sea. Before the decree, the minimum capacity was 740 kilowatt, and after correction it is 1,000 kilowatt, and we also introduced the point that allows to reduce the capacity in case the technical justification is provided. We have also changed point 431 Kingston boxes, and just briefly I'm going to describe this change. In the past, the previous rule had a requirement to the valves and fittings above water line. They were in the same chapter where the Kingston box requirements are. Now we have split these terms and optimized the description so that you could find the requirements easily, the requirements related to Kingston boxes and valves and fittings. Now I'm going to briefly describe the requirements of international conventions, and my colleague Kazimir Andreevich will describe them in more details. Just briefly, I would like to say there are two resolutions introduced. The resolution 286/71 with respect to the Baltic Sea and Northern Seas NO3 emissions related rule, level 3. And it also contains the information for the supply of the fuel. What are the changes? There are particular rules. All vessels built starting from the January 1st, 2021, the vessels which construction started after this date, these vessels and their mechanisms should comply with the standard emission standard Tier 3. This slide describes all the criteria that shall be observed, shall be complied with. Standard Tier 3, it was, by the way, one of the questions of PAL dockyard. This standard is not applied to the following types of engines: diesel engine installed on the vessel with a capacity less than 750 kilowatt. And if the vessel was built in Baltic Sea or in one of the Northern Seas dockyards For example, if it's a double fuel engine and you do not have the possibility to fuel it with gas, this kind of engine can be used in compliance with the standard Tier 2 until the moment when it leaves the special zone, and the short-term operation is acceptable before the vessel leaves this area. Next slide. Two directives, 97/70 EU and the regulation of European Parliament. The first, these are a compulsory documents. It's about the harmonized safety regime for the vessels 24 meters and above, and the second regulation about recycling and changing the EU rules 1013/2006. It is necessary to apply the Hong Kong Convention requirements to the recycling and to all the procedures related to such vessels. And there was also Decree 1641, dated May 2021. The manual was developed on the insurance of the safety of fishing vessels with the length 24 meters and above, operating in the northern seas. These safety rules, I will briefly mention. This document is only bearing a recommendation status now, and any ship owner can choose either to use or not to use these rules. And we are going to make an inquiry and wait for the decision of administration of Russian Federation. And as soon as we get the information regarding this regulation, we are going to inform you. I would also like to highlight the following. There are few crucial changes. In the part 1 of classification, we have developed and introduced the new format. What are these tables about? Now on, starting from the year 2020, all the symbols and class notations of ships are split on compulsory and required. So we have the requirements to each symbol and each class notation. The designers and dockyards personnel, they will have the descriptions and references for each rule and each symbol of this class. Each notation will be described in details. Characteristics of fishing vessels are presented on this slide. This is applied to all the fishing vessels. And I would like to say a few words. If you remember from the previous forum, more than 20 notations and symbols were developed, and within last 2 years, we have added another 12 symbols, which were developed additionally. I would also like to describe our website, how to search for the rules and requirements and different documents. Register website has the link to RS publication. This link is available.
It is available on the address that is listed on the slide, and it includes all the rules, manuals, recommendations, and research publications that you could not, of course, easily find in the previous versions of our website. Now, all the information is shown very clearly on the web page in great detail, and on the left you can see the links that are active. If you press this link on the left, you have documents that are connected to the link on the right, and marked in green are the sections that are soon to be introduced, and you can see both the Russian or English version of the document, and you can download all the rules very easily. Also, it is stated what circular letter was used to introduce a specific rule. Talking about website navigation, you may remember that we used to have register rule. You download the rule and you can see the circular letter. And in order to track the changes, you needed to read through all the circular letters. But now, every time we have a circular letter, we introduce a new version of the rules. So you don't need to track specific changes introduced by the letter, but you can just download the latest edition of the rule. Then, talking about the next slide, what else can you find there? We also have a search function that allows you to quickly find a document. You can just use the code of the letter and 4-digit code, and you can see everything very clearly. And document details, including previous versions, are also available. You can search by number, keywords, titles, and so on. So the search does work. This is another new feature. You can download a set of documents. Very often, the designer representatives ask us, for instance, for a set of documents that pertain to a specific vessel. We used to need quite a long time to gather all of those documents, even if you were a registrar or employee. But now you can input the parameters and download a set of documents, the relevant set of documents. You can download them with a single archive. In the archive, you can see the documents without any titles, but you do have links to the documents in both in Russian and English. Very convenient. And the last thing we introduced is something that we have been asked for a lot: gap analysis. What changed in these 3 years in terms of these bolt or steel sheet? All of those changes can now be tracked on the website. Let me go back. Let me show it. Please focus on this item. Here you have gap analysis for the last 6 months. Here you can see all the changes to the rules with links to circular letters. All the links are active. You can review them. This is something we did recently. It is in English because we did it for Korean shipyards, but now we will publish those digests every 6 months in Russian and English so that it's clear for all of our clients. And this is what I'd like to talk about. I'm sorry if I used more time than I was allocated, but no, I do still have time to thank you. Dear colleagues, thank you for really taking time to visit our conference, for your support, and we do ask for your feedback at any time. We are open for your dialogue and suggestions, and this is what will allow us to build great vessels that will entice envy in all the other countries, and we will become the best classifying society. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Andrei Vladimirovich. Dear colleagues, now I'd like to give the floor to Kazimir Dobrzyński. He is the chief specialist of a department, and he will cover the frequently asked questions by the designers and new changes. My name is Kazimir Andreevich Dobrzyński. I work on documentation approval. I will now cover the frequently asked questions built to register class and for the Russian Federation flag. Now, we had 16 designs that are being reviewed. 6 of them are reviewed by the main office, and the others by the other offices. With our experience and your suggestions, we streamline the rules for modern shipbuilding, but there are some questions regarding certain international requirements, including requirements for vessels entering EU waters. But before I cover those, I'd like to talk through the chart of interaction with the registrar. The designer or shipyard use email or FTP server to send the documents, and for each project we have a project head who coordinates the process, and that person becomes the single point of contact for all the questions connected to vessel design. Although this is something that's convenient, we are always trying to improve convenience and carry out digital transformation, and that's why we are designing the ship project or ship design module for our website, which would allow you to see the status of documents that you send to the register, see any comments, so everything connected to the project. It will also design you to upload drawings from your computer without using email or any other tools, which we hope will be quite convenient and will streamline and also make the process more transparent. But anyway, the registrar will still have the project head who can answer any of your questions. Talking about requirements for ship operated in the EU, this is connected to some additional EU requirements that are imposed on all the vessels regardless of the flag if they enter EU ports or anchor in EU waters. This is the directive setting up harmonized safety regime for fishing vessels of 22 meters in length and over. And the second is the directive of ship recycling and amending. Talking about the directive, now the Torremolino Convention and Protocol and Cape Town Convention is not in place yet. However, it allows for regional standards for vessels used in a single region. So in the 1991, they introduced, they started their efforts to build the directive, and in 1997 they introduced the Council Directive 9770 EU, and it is connected on fire safety, keel permeability, and other properties. This directive is imposing more requirements on the vessels 24 meters and over, and it is mandatory for the vessels flying the flag of EU member state or any other flag when they visit the port. Since most registered class are flying the Russian flag, there is an order for us to issue certificates under this directive. If we need to issue the certificate for a different flag vessel, it makes sense to do that through a specific office, and that's something that we can do. And the procedure is quite simple. During the design stage, you apply for the check whether the vessel complies with the directive requirements. So this is something that we do then. I'd like to note that although our rules are harmonized with the directive, but at some points the directive is imposing harsher restrictions, and those restrictions only need to be applied for vessels that are planning to visit EU ports. And I am going to talk through those requirements in greater detail today. The first requirement is on the collision bulkhead and watertight bulkhead. The Cape Town Agreement and the directive, they cover the distance from the forward perpendicular, not less that 5% of the vessel length, and for vessels over 45 meters in length, it should be less than 2 meters. Also, there are additional requirements for ship stability. Stability data needs to be uploaded additionally for certain types of vessels. Also, for vessels that are planned to be used north of latitude 63 between longitude 28 and 11, 40 kilograms per square meter on exposed weather decks and gangways, and 10 kilograms per square meter projected lateral area of each side. The last harsher requirement is the requirement regarding airspaces included behind ceilings, panelings, and so on, and over but less than 60 meters. In case there are no challenges in the design connected with this directive, after the design is approved, there is construction supervision, and if there are no questions or comments, this 251 certificate is issued together with the other documentation. This certificate is hosted on the vessel and confirms that it complies with the directive requirements. Another document is EU regulation on ship recycling. The purpose is the early ratification of Hong Kong International Convention on the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships in the European Union and third countries. This regulation is mandatory for all vessels flying the flag of the EU and of other countries that enter EU ports or moor in EU territory. You can see the scope on the screen. For EU flag vessels, it depends on the contract date or keel construction date. And for the others, it pertains to all the vessels starting from the 31st of December. The key requirement of the regulation is that the vessel should have a list of all the hazardous materials used. The register has an order from the Maritime Administration to issue certificates of compliance with this regulation. The list needs to be based on the MEPS PC resolution 269, both for the ships under construction or in operation. So the inventory of hazardous materials has to be developed based on an application. The registry inspector needs to check that in part 1 of the inventory there are all the hazardous materials and check their location and amount. Apart from the inventory, also material declarations and certificates of compliance are checked. The inspector checks that materials locations are indeed correct. There is a separate certificate issued based on that can be used for certificate of compliance. And then the registry issues the declaration of compliance. This declaration and the list of hazardous materials needs to be maintained by the vessel. And the vessel can be denied entry into ports or detained lacking a copy of this declaration and a copy of the inventory. I'd like to also note that the inventory needs to be drafted in the official language of the registrar. If it is not English, French, or Spanish, it needs also to be translated into one of those languages, and we normally use English, of course. So I covered my presentation quite quickly. If you have any questions, I will be happy to field those. Thank you, Kazimir. I think that we will have all the questions at the end of the first session. Thanks to your speed, we are on schedule despite starting later, and now we are on time.
Next report will be presented by a person, not the representative of the register, but it's the representative of the Marine Engineering Bureau. Nikolai Avtutov is the Director of Perspective Development. Please, the floor is yours. You're welcome. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to express my gratefulness to the organizers of this conference because, irrespective of all the COVID limitations, they've managed to invite all people who are interested in the development of the fishing fleet. Thank you so much. I'm pleased you've managed to realize this task. And this report was prepared jointly by the specialists of Northwest Fishing Consortium and Marine Engineering Bureau. And we are going to talk about the new crab processor vessels. 2 years ago, I told you that we started working on the very interesting project, the elite crab processor KSP-02, and the first vessel of this project, Arctur, was delivered in Yalova in Turkey in March 2021. This vessel was designed and built under the supervision of Register of Shipping, and on this vessel, we managed to avoid all the problems that we have faced in the past when approving the documents for previously built crab processing ships. And we participated in these projects in the past together with our colleagues from Norway, from Skipsteknisk company. And during this project execution, we almost never faced any problems, any issues when improving the documents in the register. So we described you 2 years ago that we've managed to overcome all the problems. After this, Azimut, the second ship of this project, was delivered, and now the third vessel, Neptune. We expect the delivery of this vessel in the nearest time, in the nearest 2-3 months. This is the cross-section, the side view, quite a standard structure, the bridge, the fishing, processing part, and working operational fleet where the crab catchers are located. The ships of this project are the largest. The length is a bit exceeding 70 meters, and the capacity of the crab hold is about 1,400 cubic meters. And it's the biggest size. These are the biggest dimensions in the world. Crab processing equipment capacity is also very high. It's able to process 60 kilo of raw material, and it is giving us 40 tons of finished frozen products. These are the decks where this equipment is located. About 600 of the fishing deck equipment wraps are located. This is the location of the compartments of fishing part, and in the middle part there is a frozen equipment, the crab processing, crab reception and processing part, and here the material sorting area and the packaging material storage area. This is the vertical conveyor for crab, where the crab is delivered into the processing zone. Why is it vertical? Because this location allows to reduce the space on the deck. The sorting zone, crab processing and sorting area, the freezer cargo hold. It's equipped with special conveyor system in order to make it convenient to load and unload. This is the freezer hold and the packing material and salt hold. All the compartments are quite typical for this type of vessels. This is the location of the equipment. Here you can see 2 cargo booms which allow to unload the hold fully, including the operation at a very high roll and pitch level. The entire set of equipment was selected by the customer on the basis of experience of operation of this kind of vessels, and on the basis of construction and designing of similar vessels. Next project I would like to describe you, and the design was performed under the supervision of register KSP01, and these vessels are smaller, but still they are not that much different from the point of view of capacity. 600 tons of raw material and 40 tons of the finished product. The general view of the vessel. You can see it was designed in compliance with the Norwegian prototype that was built on Tersan dockyard in Turkey, but I think this information will be provided by my colleague from Turkey. This is the layout of the deck, KSP01 project ship, and the crab processing zone. It is very similar to the previous project and the project of the ship that was built in Turkey. The laying of the vessel was performed in May last year in very complicated conditions. In the times of pandemic, there were no guests, but it was arranged in a very good way from the point of by the dockyard, and now we are actively building two parts of the hull structure. You can see the hull structure of the first ship. It is almost completed, and the second vessel is under the construction. This is the hold, the crab frozen material holder. That's it from my side. I would like my report to be continued by Mr. Nazarenko, the representative of the Northwest Fishing Consortium. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to say a few words, good words about our colleagues from the register. Our company was the first in Russia that started the modernization of the fleet, and we were the first in Russia to sign 4 contracts with the Vyborg shipbuilding plant, and it happened in 2016. We were the first. It was not a simple procedure, but we have managed to get together hundreds of participants of this process and to find the correct algorithm. We have come up with a particular result, and today, starting from 2016, we have achieved some progress. We are realizing the shipbuilding contracts with the Vyborg dockyard. KMT-01 is the project of the ship. And the project 935, we have taken a decision about participation in this project in September 2016, and it is now operating in the Sea of Barents, and it is fishing successfully in compliance with the investment quota that was provided to us in compliance with the presidential program in October 2015. Today, 1 year ago, we have decided to participate in this project, which is operating in Barents Sea, and now we are building the ship of the project, which is built on Vyborgsky dockyard. It is now going for sea trials in the eastern part of the Baltic Sea. In Tersan dockyard in Turkey, we have built and commissioned first crab processor ST-184, and it was realized with the participation and support Shakir Erdogan, the representative of Tersan ship dockyard. In Azat dockyard, we are in the process of re-equipment of 3 procurement vessels, 3 supplies vessels on the project of Marine Engineering Bureau. One of the vessels was already delivered, and the second is expected to be accepted at the end of September. In October, Now we are also in the process of construction of 5 crab processing vessels and the dockyard is building ships as per our requirement. All these ships are built and re-equipped under the supervision of Russian Maritime Register. Each of the listed dockyard is working under supervision of our representative and the customer representative, and technical supervision is required to monitor all the works and taking technical solutions. The team for technical supervision is working in each of the plants, and it involves the efforts of engineers, designers, and all relevant specialists, specialists in the hull structures, mechanical equipment, and all other types of equipment installed on ship. This work is performed in the continuous interaction with engineers of Russian Maritime Register. They exchange the information, exchange technical solutions, and their approaches are taken into consideration. We work with Register on the approval of all the solutions, and we also work with representatives of the Register in Turkey. All the registers of the engineers of Register express their readiness to discuss and to take the optimal decisions, choose the optimal solutions in order to ensure the innovations and application of the best equipment and materials. When we just started a few years ago, it was a very complicated process, a road to cover, but we have managed to unite the efforts and opinions of many experts. At some point, when we developed the design and working documentation, we faced some obstacles and there were some problems that was really difficult. It was really difficult to solve those problems. And we couldn't even arrange this process, and Skype conferences did not help us a lot. So we had a meeting in St. Petersburg with all the representatives of all interested parties. We worked within one day, and half of the problems, half of the issues were solved immediately. And we continued working. So I would like to emphasize that it was all arranged quite quickly, and we have witnessed the willingness to help us and to support us. Now, my colleagues already described the changes, and it was related to our projects, our project in Vyborg ski dockyard, for example, and we elaborated the scope of rules to Polar Code, the scope of requirements to fire safety and protection of different compartments, including the crab processing vessel, requirements to the materials, including the cooling agents requirements. We corrected the rules related to applied electrical equipment, and we have optimized the requirements related to location of the cylinders and pipelines around the compartments of the ship. In 2021, on the pilot vessel, in the pandemic conditions, we have performed a first remote inspection of the vessel. All the enumerated procedures prove that our colleagues from Register are highly interested in the cooperation, and they are interested in the successful execution of all the goals set by the programs of Russian Federation government, and all sides, all participants' experience is taken into consideration. We also base our work on the experience of our foreign colleagues from different dockyards, and the execution of these projects is only possible when we set the open dialogue and exchange the experience and best practices by the shipbuilders and ship owners. We thank our colleagues for joint work within this period, and we hope for the future fruitful cooperation, though we are absolutely sure we will move on in this direction. And taking a chance, I would like to say that all 4 projects that we are executing are linked to our colleagues from Marine Engineering Bureau. And today we can see here the management of this design organization. So I would like everyone to ask you to have a minute of silence in the memory of our colleague.
Прошу прощения.
I apologize. In the memory of our friend
Егорова Геннадия.
Yegorov Gennady Vyacheslavovic. Everyone knew him. Everybody loved him and respected him.
Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you for your attention.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much. I would like to confirm that the construction of these vessels was linked to the
Новых и облегчением существующих требований
to the introduction of new changes, new rules, and changing of previous rules. And I would like to thank the participants of this work for open dialogue, for introduction of proposals, and for efficient work that allowed us to
легче и лучше, и
simplify our rules. And
работы и при техническом
the experience
баллонных судов
of this joint work
более прозрачно. Спасибо вам.
is now more efficient and transparent due to these efforts. Thank you very much, colleagues. We have completed the first session of our conference, and if anybody has any questions regarding the reports, or if you have any questions to me, we are ready and happy to answer all your questions. My name is Semyon Nikonov, and I work in the Hull Structures Department of Register. And today I would like to describe you the program for designing of hull structures of the vessels.
Начну немножко
I
издалека.
would like to start
Все проверки корпусных конструкций на
with a
соответствие правилам
distant point. All the checks
два типа.
of the rules compliance can be split on 2 types: descriptive checks,
Стоят сравнение
which mainly include the comparison of characteristics of the requirements to the characteristics
проекции.
of the project.
И второй тип проверок
And the second type of inspections are the inspections on the basis of direct calculations, and the methods which are used are calculative and particularly methods of final elements.
ну и в зависимости
And depending upon
существенных различий между проверками первого и
differences
второго типа,
between these 2 types of inspections, we come up with a split division of the software on 2 types.
программное обеспечение, которое
This is software that is primarily aimed at prescriptive checking, and software
проверок
for
методами
direct calculations in accordance with relevant rules and guidelines.
программному обеспечению второго типа
The second type of software that is currently used in the registry includes Atlas 3D.
выполнять
This piece of software makes it possible to make checks and calculations according to the IACS rules
требования, то есть это
for the relevant vessels those are oil tankers, 150 and more, and fishing vessels of 90 and more meters. This is a pre-post processor that streamlines modal calculation by applying forces automatically, setting boundary conditions for the modal, and it also includes tools that make it easier to review and assess the results. And Nastran is the solution. The model is prepared in Atlas 3D, then it is transferred to Nastran, and then calculation results are sent back. Also, there are criteria that are used to check whether a piece of the vessel meets certain criteria. The prescriptive checking, classical checking software that is used by the registry is Atlas 2D. This software suite allows us to make prescriptive checks. However, it is limited by IACS rules. We now don't have a dedicated piece of software for the registry checks. So in order to streamline and make the work of our specialists and your specialists easier, now we are developing a new software suite that's called Odyssey. This will include hull checks, mostly for the Section 2 of the registry rules, and a number of other rules that I'm going to cover in the next slide. In order to have all of those checks in a single tool, we are now adding the checks based on IACS rules into the Odyssey. Right now, quite a wide range, even the majority of the checks that have been planned are already implemented in the software. And here you can see the features that are already available or that are about to be deployed in the next 2 to 3 months. I'd like to comment here in brief each of the items. First of all, it's Part 2 hull. It's check of materials for the requirements of Part 2. The general strength, local strength of longitudinal and transverse members, ice class ship strengthening, calculations for ships of special design, although it does not include the vessels with wide deck and floating cranes. We are planning to implement those vessels in 2021. Also, IACS common rules are now being developed and will be deployed soon. Here I'd like to note that since IACS requires the calculations of the fatigue strength, and these are now being added. Also, we have integrated IACS unified requirements for materials URS 6. According to Part 2, the alternative approach to materials is possible. choosing materials using S6 requirements.
Интегрировано в программное обеспечение унифицированные требования МАКа S11A.
Also, the software includes S11A, longitudinal strength of container ships.
Для судов двойного
Also, new registry requirements for double-purpose ships that can move stern forward in the ice.
эти проверки интегрированы, и сейчас
These checks have been integrated and are now being tested with the technical specialists of the hull department. There is also a separate module of the
также
Part 3 checks for the
долговечности судов.
steering equipment and also prescriptive calculations for fatigue, strength.
По аналогии с правилом МАКа, только
It is similar to IACS rules, but using the registry rules.
документ правил классификации и
Also added rules for classification and construction of ships carrying liquefied gases in bulk. And checks here are mostly focused on the materials.
Значит, в дополнение к упомянутым специальным
In
типам
addition to the special types of ships
интеграция проверок, для которых
that
в начальной стадии
are now at the early stages of implementing the checks for, there are some features that we are starting to work on,
2022 года
and we are planning to launch early 22.
представлена эта функциональность.
Here you can see those features.
Усиление судов Балтийских и Полярных
First and
классов,
foremost,
части 17.
it is
Здесь стоит сказать, что мы
ice strengthening for Baltic ice class and polar class ships. We expect this feature in the next 2 months, even because we are working on it, focusing on it. Also calculations for assignment of a distinguishing mark NAPSA,
также это унифицированное требование МАКа.
also IACS unified requirements URS10.
Напомню, что согласно части 3,
You may remember that in part 3 you can have an alternative rudder check. The part 3 check has already been implemented, but we are now working on IACS. Also guidelines on stress strain state assessment by finite element analysis. It has recently been developed
расширение этого документа,
and we are planning to expand it. But now there are certain recommendations for the calculations using the finite element analysis
части 2,
according to the sections of part 2 that
прежде всего,
require direct calculations.
балочной конечной элементной идеализации.
Those are maybe mostly calculations of grillages modeled with beam finite elements. This here software will be used as a preprocessor. Then it will be sent to Nostran, and after that we will be able to get the results.
Теперь непосредственно к функционалу.
Here, let's have an overview of the features
Не вдаваясь, так скажем, в глубокие детали, в подробности.
without going into great detail, just so that you had a brief overview of the software suite.
Что в рамках выставки Нева у нас планируется
In
большая
the NIVA exhibition, we will have the product launch presentation. About an hour will be spent on the features,
работы с программным обеспечением.
how you use this software, and we do invite all of you to that event. And I think that in that event I will be able to talk in greater detail.
Как можно увидеть на этом слайде,
As you can see on this slide,
она говорит нам о том, что в программе предусмотрено два основных режима
there are 2 key modes.
работы. Это режим моделирования
The first is modeling
и второй режим,
mode,
это режим просмотра результатов.
and the second is
выступает кнопка
result portrayal.
Как только
When you press compute results,
все, что он хочет проверить, все, что
when you
для
have
выполнения проверок, он нажимает кнопку
input
Compute
all the
Results,
checks, you press compute results,
может увидеть
and then
результаты для
you can see all of the results
которые были заведены в программу.
that were requested.
Нижняя картинка показывает основные элементы интерфейса
At the bottom, you can see the key interface elements.
программы.
This is the main menu.
Скажу о каждом элементе. Слева можно увидеть
On the left,
дерево проекта,
you can see a project tree,
в котором
a project browser
отображаются вкладки, соответствующие,
with tabs
которые заводят.
corresponding to the data that is inputted in the model.
Тоже скажу про каждую вкладку отдельно.
And I will cover all of the tabs separately. In the central window, you can see the 2D view of the vessel.
Здесь схематично представлено.
Of course, it is not very detailed, but
Проекция бок и полуширота.
these cross-sections are proportional
Пользователям главным
to the data inputted by the user.
все элементы сути,
Also, here you can see all the elements of the vessel, whether transverse, cross-section,
черным цветом обозначается, и отсеки,
and
тоже пользователь
the sections
дать для того, чтобы
that the user needs to input
затем их ассоциировать с вводимыми конструкциями.
to associate them with the structures and calculate loads on the structures.
Значит, справа можно увидеть, значит, панель
On the right, you can see
информации, которая
the text data panel
в вкладке к тому функционалу.
that corresponds to the tab that the user is now focusing on. At the bottom,
Сообщение от программы, которое
there is a status bar
корректность поведения программы.
that allows you to track software performance and key items so that you can see what we are doing. And at the top, we have quite a lot of toolbars that you can set up
в которой мы находимся.
separately, and that also depends on the mode that we are using.
Значит, теперь
Now,
пробежимся по основным
let's cover the key tabs of the project tree. On the ship tab, you input
основная информация по судну.
the main vessel data, that is
Контракта, дата заключения контракта.
contract date,
Имя судна, регистровый номер, имя,
name, register number,
флаг морской администрации.
the Marine Administration flag.
На подвкладке, вкладке ship, задаются главные
In
определения и некоторые
also you input main dimensions
инспекционные скорости.
and other characteristics as
Далее на подвкладке
the
notation
speed.
задаются
In notations,
основная словесная
you
характеристика
input
и также
the
дополнительные
main
классы,
notations for the vessel and class symbols,
которых от того, какие мы нотации зададим,
and depending on those notations,
проверок, которые будут применяться к этому судну.
we identify the number of checks for the vessel. On the General Parameters tab,
Службы, соответствующей части
you
права,
input
также
the
методика, согласно которой будет проверяться
planned service life and the method used to check materials.
требования S6, за исключением
You can use registry rules or unified rules.
Соответственно, далее на вкладке
Then,
Spacing and Bulkheads
in
задается
spacing and bulkheads,
шпация, практическая шпация,
you add the practical spacing, the
нулевого шпангоута от
distance
нулевой
of
координаты X по длине,
distance from the x coordinate,
количество непроницаемых
Also,
переборок, их
the
положение по длине судна, положение таранной
number
переборки,
of
переборки,
the bulkheads and the water tightness of bulkheads, and some of the checks
как мы задали, в дальнейшем будут выполняться, например,
differ depending on the data that we input.
таранной переборки,
If we input the incorrect location
не там,
of the collision bulkhead, the software will notify us.
далее. У нас есть под
Then
вкладки Ship,
we have
значит,
another subtab,
здесь мы
loads.
задаем огибающий нагрузок для
Here,
всех случаев загрузки.
we input loads for all the load options,
Верхние и нижние для перерезающих сил и огибающих для моментов в случае прогиба и перегиба. Значит, далее
then
идем ко второй, точнее к третьей крупной подкладке. Вторая
we have the third main tab.
класс. Она не освещена в
The
презентации.
ICE class is not something that I cover in the presentation.
Символов класса.
If we
Класс
have
определений, будь то
ICE class indicated, either registry class or polar class
Балтийский класс,
or Baltic
у нас
class,
появляется эта вкладка,
we have this tab
параметры для проведения
that
проверок.
includes key check parameters.
Значит, далее у нас идет вкладка Materials, которая
Then
позволяет
you can see the Materials tab,
материалов, используемых
where you can create the material library
инструментов при формировании этой библиотеки,
as an additional tool to create this library. You can use
которая содержит
the
стали в substrate,
default library with
стали нормальной прочности, повышенной прочности и дальше.
default steel grades of regular, average and high strength. Also you have aluminum,
Есть при этом у пользователя задача
and you also have an opportunity to add your own material
Затем, соответственно,
with its parameters.
библиотеку сформировали, мы
After we have created this library,
материала тому или иному
when we are assigning materials to an element, we can see those materials
работу пользователя.
in the
Следующий
separate window.
Role Profiles
Then rolled profiles
позволяет сформировать библиотеку каждого
This
профилей, которые используются в рамках
makes it
проекта.
possible to create a role profile library.
Которые
We
помогают
have also auxiliary libraries
соответствующим
used in creating the main library.
библиотеки. Значит, включают в себя
Those include
для несимметричного полособульного
the
стандарта DIN,
asymmetric
profile.
bulb profile,
Далее два отечественных стандарта,
also two Russian
и также
standards for symmetric and asymmetric bulbs, also GP standard for asymmetric bulb.
пользовательские сечения.
You can also add user-defined cross-section of the bulb.
Далее функциональность вкладки Compartments.
Then in compartments,
Программа правильно нам посчитала нагрузку,
in order to have a correct calculation of the
использовался при расчетах
load,
конструкции. Мы должны задать
we need to input the compartments.
отмечу, задаются на данном этапе
The
грубо
compartments are added in rough.
по длине. Затем у нас есть
The
возможность
most important thing is to have the correct length,
сечениями
and then you can associate those with the bulkheads that are connected with this compartment. You can also have symmetric compartments
ДП на правый и левый борт.
when
Есть
they are symmetric on the
сразу, есть ли у нас
sides of the vessels. You can indicate whether it is insulated, heated, the minimum temperature of the load.
что касается жидких грузов.
As for liquid,
Задается давление при
for liquid loads, you can have also the air duct height.
тип отсека тоже обязательно определяется, потому что он влияет.
The compartment type is also chosen because it impacts the requirements.
Можно сказать, тоже автономный.
The next
Я уже сказал.
tab,
Здесь у нас присутствуют проверки для рулей, которые
which includes rudder checks separate from the other modules, and stern post checks.
есть вкладка STEM, она не приведена.
Also, we have also a stern tab where you can have for stern.
Ну и три
Checks.
самых главных модуля, так
And
сказать,
the three of the main modules
это transverse
are
sections,
here. The first one is transverse sections.
выпадает список всех
Here we have list of all transverse sections inputted by the user
к тому или иному сечению.
to go to a section. You can click on it in 2D viewer,
Переходим
And with a double click, you will be taken to the model of this cross-section and can work with it. So you can input all the structures that needs to be checked. After all the data is inputted, you press compute results, and you can see the results for each structure, either a hull sheet, and the scope of results is very detailed, and each check can be expanded, and you can see the formulas that were used. And with hover over, you can see a tooltip that indicates the rule that was used.
You can also monitor all the coefficients which were used during this check, and it allows to verify the data entered by the user and verify the software performance. Next. It is very convenient. We can display the results in compliance with particular criteria or for the entire cross-section. There are two criteria presented. There is a color indication. Depending upon the design element color, you can understand what is the reserve of this element, what's the performance of this element with respect to any criteria. So you can see the top left corner image. Here we can see the results: active voltage, actual voltage, and the required voltage value. We can also check the thickness of the hull structure plates. Then we understand what is the reserve, whether we have the reserve, and understand the non-compliance of the elements with the requirements. Similar to previous module, we have the module for the watertight sections check, and the principle is very similar, but there are some specific features. We also have the tab on the level of the project, bulkhead arrangement, where we have the list of all the bulkheads entered by the user, and when pressing a particular bulkhead, we see the module that allows us to work with a particular bulkhead, and double click allows us to see, to enter the viewer for a relevant object. 2D viewer show us the black color, and the cross-section bulkheads. The watertight bulkheads module allows us to set the thickness, the beams, and it is quite a detailed level of criteria that can be entered. All the details set, then you press results, and you get the criteria for each design element that was entered, that was set by you. We can check if the criteria comply with all the requirements and check the links. There is also a facility of color indication, similar to previous functions. Next module is the module of the calculations for the sections, and it checks the compliance with the relevant ICE class of RS of the register. We check the compliance, and we plan to introduce the Swedish rules. There is the same idea. There is a module
виде схематичной
of the bulkhead, and which is presented as a schematic view.
при нажатии двойном на модели перекрытия.
When you double-click the module, you work with this element, and again here you can set any criteria: the beams, the plates, dimensions, the frames, the stringers, and even the platforms of the deck can be set here. Depending upon the type of the element selected, the software can use particular requirement which is related to this element.
Стрингеров, соответственно,
For example, for stringers
вторым конструкциям также требования по
and
определенному
plates,
моменту сопротивления и по требуемой площади стенки.
there are the requirements to the resistance and the thickness of the wall. After the analysis,
Результаты для каждого элемента,
you can see the results for each element, and
которые соответствуют той или иной проверке, мы можем
each
раскрыть
tabs shows you the compliance with the criteria, and you can view all the checks performs with all the links presented to you.
Ну и по аналогии, значит, также предусмотрен вывод
In the same
результатов
way,
в виде цветовой индикации для всех.
the results are displayed as a color indication, and here the criteria are a bit different.
Теория предельного состояния,
A theory of final status which complies with the chapter 3.10. It's different from the calculations
основного объема части
which
2.
are in the basis of these checks.
На этом у меня все, коллеги. Спасибо.
That's all, dear colleagues. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Семен. Было очень интересно. Теперь я хочу предоставить
Now I
слово
would like to give the floor to Alexander Staritsyn, who represents the company Wärtsilä East.
Добрый день, уважаемые друзья.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, friends.
Я хочу
I
присоединиться
would
к
like to join
коллегам по докладам
the previous speakers and thank the register for this opportunity to meet all of you and speak at this forum.
Мы взаимодействуем как
Russian Maritime Register of Shipping and Wärtsilä Company are interacting for already quite a long time, and we work in this sphere of certification of different types of equipment systems, ships, automation systems. Wärtsilä is a Finnish company which is producing quite a big range of different products and executing all types of projects in this field. As it was mentioned by my colleagues,
правила регистра
the rules of the register changed a lot, and this is related to introduction of modern technologies and modern approach in the shipbuilding and ships designing process. Modern solutions are different from the old rules, from the previous rules, and my colleagues tried to criticize the register, but I would like to say that now it becomes more and more difficult to perform this work. The register performed a huge scope of work, and the most important thing is that they've managed to speed up the processes and simplify the process of changes itself. But we are not trying to find a compromise with the safety of sailing and operation of ships and equipment. Opposite, we think that new solutions and these changes, they give us an opportunity to increase the safety level of ships operation.
без адаптации новых правил невозможно использовать новые технологии.
You cannot use the new technologies without adopting new rules, and you should work in compliance with the new demands. It's really important that new technologies bring us economic advantages and make us more competitive in the market.
На Калининградском
The
заводе
modern project which is being built in Yantar dockyard, where we are supplier
силовой установки
of the project itself, of the ship and the energy production plant and the propulsive complex. There are a lot of new solutions which were approved with the register of shipping, and we would like to thank the heads of the project who really approved this design and the entire project really quickly. As a supplier, we tried to unite the energy efficiency with the hull structure efficiency. And we've managed to achieve this efficiency and increase the space inside the ship. We integrated our propulsive complex in compliance with the hull structure demand, and this is the advanced equipment that was used. The propulsive complex that was installed on this ship is really high technological equipment. Let's talk about future, the nearest future, which is approaching us already. For example, today, while coming here, I listened to the advertising on the radio, the new building project, real estate project, where they described how good is this project because it is in the ecological, the building is located in the environment which is clean, and very good, clean ecological situation of the project was described as the advantage. So transportation infrastructure is really important for us, but marine industry is really crucial for us as well, and it plays a special role when taking into consideration the environmental safety, and we must remember about the goals to save the planet. A reduction of the gases is one of the goals of the industry. This is the task of the age for marine industry, and regulation of such a process is the motive, the driver for transformation of the industry. We have set the goal to reduce the greenhouse gases emissions by 40% by 2030, and to reduce those by 50% by the year 2050. And we consider that the number of the vessels will grow, and on the level of the vessels, this will be a 70% reduction, and by the end of this age, we have taken an obligation to exclude the greenhouse gases emission at all. So how can we solve these tasks? How can we achieve these goals? By the year 2030, we can achieve quite good results. Today, we already have the resources to achieve the goals of IMO. So we should start using clean types of fuel, and the interaction of information systems about the operation. Information data will allow us to use efficiently the components, the systems of the vessel and the fleet in general. We are not only talking about fishing industry, but we are talking about the commercial sailing and commercial shipping, and all participants of the market, all the players of this industry, classification societies and manufacturers, regulating authorities, and the customers, the ship's owners, the consumers of these products should participate actively in this process. So we all are also the users of the fishing industry, of the fishing process. We take the decision which product to buy in the supermarket, finally. Talking about the year 2050, here we are going to face some difficulties, but still we already possess some technologies that can help in the achievement of these goals. Usage of the bioresources, optimization of logistic chains, recycling of the waste, carbon rapture. And here, state regulatory is really important. Usage of renewable energy sources, wind and solar energy, and new technologies play a very important role here. What are the new technologies available at the moment, apart from the engines? We believe that engine will still be there on shipboard in 2050, and in the future it will still be used. But fuel cell are the new technologies which are being developed right now. Hybrid types of the vessels using accumulators on shipboard is also new technologies which spreads quickly. Nuclear energy is locally applied technology, but we believe that the development will be there, and I think you all will agree that alternative energy is possible, but its application is much more expensive, and it's much more expensive than the initial sources of this energy. So we think that these alternative sources of energy will be combined with the combustion engine, at least in the nearest future.
Пока я готовил доклад, я нашел интересную
While preparing this report, I faced a very interesting statement. Maybe you can
использование растительного масла
recognize the author.
может показаться
Using the
но со временем такие
vegetable oil can be a technology which might raise a lot of doubts, but still this can be a new, innovative, highly technological solution. But in the future, these kind of products can become as important as the fuel. Rudolf Diesel pronounced these words about 100 years ago.
Поэтому мы верим,
That's why we believe
и они останутся.
in the engines, in the products that we produce. We consider they will remain for the next 100 years. They will still be used. What are fuel types which are available right now and will be available in the future? We plan that within the next 50 years period, the variety of the fuel types will be increased, and most of the types will be based on the hydrogen. We are talking about green hydrogen, which is produced in compliance with the new technologies, and it does not increase the emission of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Green hydrogen is the term. When the stringent legislation requires reduction of the emissions, then the hydrogen can be a proper solution. We can see today that many vessels are operating on the basis of hydrogen, but hydrogen can become a basis for creation of other types of fuel. For example, ammonia mixed with the compressed natural. Our engines can already mix hydrogen with the compressed natural gas, and 15% of the hydrogen can be mixed up with the gas on DF gas engines, and we can mix up to 20% of the hydrogen on the Otto technology engines. Currently, we are working on the definition of the best technologies applying the clean hydrogen, and we try to increase the capacity of the engine working on the hydrogen, because sometimes really the tanks
Довольно большие
for hydrogen storage are quite large, and the hydrogen, we think that hydrogen can only be used on the short distance sailing ships. The green ammonia is also another option of the fuel type that will be used in the future, but the additional investments are required from the point of view of operation with ammonia. We foresee the problems for the passenger vessels, because leakage of the ammonia can be hazardous, can create a hazardous situation for every person on the shipboard. I think this is a huge industry where the interaction is required with the register when defining the new type of fuel.
Green ammonia and alcohol is something everyone is discussing. My company recently ordered a number of vessels, and in the Eastern Forum, there were some press releases regarding green methanol or wooden alcohol. It can be stored very easily, no additional requirements. You don't need liquefying the fuel or refrigerating it, and also it can be used to retrofit existing vessels. We have experience of Stan retrofitting to use methanol fuel. We use the 40 Sulzer engine. The next step is to implement the technology into an engine portfolio. We have methanol technology, but we don't have new engines. We are searching for clients and are planning to implement this technology as the market requires. Biofuel, it is already available, and we are only looking at environmentally friendly fuel, something that does not compete with food production. Green methane is high-quality methane that can be used in our gas engines. Sometimes you even get less greenhouse gas emissions than LNG. It's a good alternative to LNG. Its specific energy is quite high, and I think it's quite a competitive technology because of the maturity. But however, biomethane is quite expensive, a few times more expensive than the LNG. The green synthetic methane uses green hydrogen and carbon as biomethane. You can use it in our gas engines. The key uncertainty here is carbon recapture. And due to low concentration of carbon in the air, the only feasible solution is to recapture carbon from biofuel burning, but not fossil fuel. Biodiesel can be used in diesel engines without additional investment if fuel specification is maintained. But you need to be careful when mixing biodiesel and regular diesel because some grades may not be mixable. On the right of the slide, you can see the energy density, what we can achieve with the same volume of alternative fuel. For instance, if you can use the diesel tank for 30 days, you will only have a week with the same volume of hydrogen. It's a major challenge of the use of hydrogen and alternative fuel in general. That includes even LNG. In the nearest future, we believe that diesel will be the key source of fuel, and Wärtsilä will continue to support it. LNG will be an intermediate fuel, a major one, and it can also be used to be mixed with other bio or synthetic fuels. We believe that the fuel of the future will be more expensive because you need to produce it. You need energy for that. That's why we focus on engine optimization, improving engine performance, and of course reducing the NOx and SOx emissions, the maintenance optimization, which can cut maintenance costs, and also we are focusing on autonomous engine work, the autonomous self-sailing vessels of the future, and also optimization of equipment cost is a major part of our efforts.
Общие выбросы парниковых газов на существующих двигателях могут быть сократены.
Greenhouse gas emissions in existing engines can be reduced today. Here is what a diesel engine owner can do for that. First, improve engine efficiency by retrofitting replacing the top piston, the fuel nozzle, and the fuel pump. It can reduce the emissions by 1 to 3%. Then you can use a multi-fuel engine to save more GHG emissions, also improving the combustion efficiency that would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 1 to 3%. And also something that we focus on is reducing the methane slip on our diesel engines and bringing it down to 0.
Двигатель внутреннего сгорания
Internal combustion engine
может быть переоборудован
can be retrofitted into a multi-fuel engine, and then the flexibility is greatly improved, and ship owners can use different grades of fuel. If you have a regular diesel cycle engine, you can use biodiesel and ammonia. If you go to the multi-fuel diesel using gas, for instance DF, using diesel cycle, you can use ammonia, biodiesel, and methanol, but separately. If you are using an Otto cycle, you can add gas, synthetic methane, synthetic LNG, or ammonia.
Если вы хотите понизить и
If you want to
зеленым индексом
be a green company, truly green company,
эффективное решение
then the most efficient solution now is to use biofuel in the engines that you have now.
у нас есть знания и технологии для
We have expertise and technology for most of fuels of the future. On this slide, you can see how our engines can use various fuels.
как водород.
Our flexible engines can use hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, and other fuels, but not all solutions are available. We have technology, but we don't have the whole portfolio of engines that could use different types of fuel.
И мы над этим очень активно работаем.
And of course, this is something that we are working on, constantly investing in R&D. And this slide portrays our roadmap. In 2003, we started in methanol in 2015. This year, we are planning to invest a lot of efforts into an ammonia engine testing. And also, we started working with a hydrogen mix engine and also started first tests for a pure hydrogen engine. Of course,
Связано с большой степени с
this
топливных систем, а также
is
безопасности эксплуатации.
connected with the fuel system and security, especially in hydrogen. You can see pictures from our hydrogen testing facility,
Цель этих испытаний было изучить
and the focus of those tests was to see the impact of hydrogen in a mixed fuel cycle on
Здесь используется
DF, and SG. Here you have hydrogen deflectors, the protective casing for ventilation and hydrogen capture. But those are testing engines, and it has a lot of potential for our interaction with classifying society, of course. Here you can see Stena Germanica, a ferry working on methanol. This is something that has been done already. And I will sum up my presentation by saying that a multi-fuel engine is a great engine for investing into the future, specifically for new building, being sure that your vessel will be competitive in the future with the use of new fuels is something that's crucial. So if you are planning on building a new vessel and want to operate it for a long time, it makes sense to invest into a multi-fuel engine capable of using various types of fuels, both in diesel and Otto cycle. Wärtsilä will continue to supply the comprehensive propulsion solutions, opening the way for future retrofitting and new use of new technologies, because we don't know which fuel will dominate the future. But we will provide both fuel systems and the fuel storage systems for new types of fuel. Certain storage facilities can already be used now for LNG pack. We have LNG tanks that can be used to store ammonia. They are made of stainless steel. For hydrogen, we don't have a cookie-cutter solution, but if our clients wish it, we can create it rather quickly, because we can use LNG pack as a foundation just to improve it in terms of reinforcing, because hydrogen is a very liquid gas. So this year we are focused on the ammonia pack and testing it extensively in our laboratory. We are also focusing on our new ammonia pack product, because LNG pack can be used as an alternative, but maybe not very efficient for new building. We need a dedicated solution. So with our registry colleagues, we have quite a lot of work in front of us together to work out the rules, and we are happy with how streamlined this process is now, how it changed, and I think it's borderline ideal, the work that our colleagues put out. Please follow our news. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander.
Идеально, конечно, было приятно.
And perfect would have been great, but I don't think there's anything perfect in this world. But this is something that we strive for. And now I would like to give the floor to our colleague from Iceland, Alfred Dolinius, Nautic Company Director.
Welcome, Alfred.
How do I start my slideshow? I'm not from Tersan, but I can talk about Tersan because I've been there
Коллеги,
multiple times.
другая презентация должна быть.
Anyway, I can start.
Давайте начнем в любом случае.
My presentation is going to be a pretty simple one.
Моя презентация будет очень простой.
I'm going to talk about the human aspect and the experience of working with RMS.
Я буду говорить о человеческом факторе и о опыте работы с российским регистром.
I'm not going to focus so much on presenting my own company, Nauticus,
Я не буду фокусироваться на презентации своей компании Nauticus,
but I think you will find that my presentation will basically help those of us designers that are working in the fishing industry design.
но я думаю, моя презентация поможет другим проектантам, работающим с рыболовными судами.
Who am I? I have experience in working with various classes in various countries in various different projects.
Кто я? У меня есть опыт работы с разными судами, с разными странами, с разными классификационными обществами.
This includes basically all the IX companies.
Включая все компании, входящие в МАКа.
I have been involved in new buildings both throughout Europe in various countries and also South America.
Я был вовлечен в судостроение по всей Западной Европе и также в Южной Америке.
My basis was in multiple retrofits of existing vessels, classified.
Изначально я работал также с перестройкой уже существующих судов и их реклассификацией.
And I must admit that basically that retrofit job prepared me very well for my design work on new vessels.
И я должен сказать, что эта работа по перестройке старых судов очень хорошо подготовила меня к моей будущей работе по проектированию новых судов.
So my work has been for the past 40 years collaborating with various classification companies on multiple areas.
И в моей работе я последние 40 лет работал с разными классификационными обществами в разных зонах.
My experience in Russia and with Russian class is now almost extending to 4 years, or will be 4 years very close.
Сейчас мой опыт работы с российским регистром уже очень близок к 4 годам.
And that is now involving new buildings, design of new buildings,
включая проектирование судов для новостроя,
and also reclassification or transfer of class from other IX companies into Russia for our clients.
и также реклассификация и передача судов из других классификационных обществ под российский регистр.
When I jumped into Russia, both feet,
Когда я 2 ногами запрыгнул в Российскую Федерацию,
I had no idea what to expect.
я понятия не имел, чего ожидать.
I had even been warned.
Меня даже предупреждали,
They will be difficult to work with.
что с ними будет сложно работать.
They will be unclear and vague.
Они будут очень непонятными и медленными.
Different people, different day, different interpretation.
Что каждый раз будет новый человек, новый день, новая интерпретация правил.
No coherency between this branch of class, head office, or the other branch.
Не будет взаимосвязи между правилами регистра, главным офисом и его филиалами.
Basically saying you could not jump into more complicated environment.
То есть мне говорили, что в более сложное окружение ты попасть не сможешь.
I don't know if it was competitors trying to scare me away from Russia,
Не знаю, может быть, это конкуренты пытались напугать меня, чтобы я не приходил в Россию.
or whether it was not people that managed to present themselves and communicate properly with class.
Или, может быть, это были люди, которые не могли себя грамотно представить и общаться с регистром.
But my impression, almost immediately,
Но мое впечатление
on first
практически
encounter,
немедленно, даже с первой встречи,
in a meeting with class, was positive.
на встрече с регистром было положительным.
I met positive attitude,
Я встретил положительные отношения,
constructive attitude,
конструктивные отношения,
eagerness to evolve
желание эволюционировать
and improve,
и улучшаться,
willingness to embrace new technology or new ways,
желание принимать новые технологии новыми способами
and even sharing what they were planning in future to improve themselves.
и даже делиться тем, как в будущем регистр сам планирует улучшать свою работу.
So here I was. Where is these difficulties?
И
They
я
must come later.
сам удивился, где же эти сложности? Наверное, они позже появятся.
So I had ongoing experience with class, going
Итак,
deeper into the design.
мой опыт с регистром начал продолжаться, и я уходил глубже в проектирование.
Obviously, I need to mention that we are mostly, or not mostly, only focused on fishing vessels.
Но я должен заметить, что мы только фокусируемся на рыболовных судах.
You could almost recognize that Russian class was acknowledging that themselves had not had so much experience with fishing vessels.
И русский регистр даже сам признавал, что у них нет такого большого опыта, не было такого большого опыта с работой с рыболовными судами.
There was even a direct invitation from them to suggest improvements to the rules
Даже было
relating to fishing
прямое
vessels.
приглашение с их стороны по подаче предложений для улучшения правил относительно рыболовных судов.
They offered us and even asked us if we wanted to participate in a pilot project for an online digital approval platform.
Нам предложили участвовать в пилотном проекте по онлайн-одобрению чертежей.
Openness for constructive dialogue with the designer on different interpretation of the rules.
Также открытость к диалогу с проектантом по интерпретации правил.
Acceptance of alternative views and interpretation of the rules.
Принятие дополнительной или интерпретации правил.
I even remember a certain instance, and I think Nautilus was the first one to kind of implement this in cooperation with Russian class.
Я даже помню один момент, и мне кажется, Nautic Rus был первым, кто это сделал совместно с регистром.
Because I think we are the first one to actually thought of not having an emergency diesel generator in a trawler.
Мы были, наверное, первыми, кто подумал о том, чтобы не ставить на траулере аварийный дизель-генератор.
Let's be frank, we have multiple generators.
Будем честными, у нас есть несколько генераторов на судне.
But everybody thought that you needed to put a specific one, a small one, that was called emergency generator.
Но все почему-то думают, что нужно выделить поставить один маленький генератор отдельно, который нужно назвать именно аварийный дизель-генератор.
But when we read the rules, to the letter what it says,
Но когда мы прочитали правила,
it actually suggested alternative source of energy.
в правилах был предложен аварийный источник энергии.
Yes, it took a little while to convince our colleagues to deviate from the all-accepting things that had been done in
Да,
past.
заняло некоторое время, чтобы убедить отойти от той практики, которая всегда делалась в прошлом.
But when we had presented our solutions and the way and no kind of deviation from safety of the vessel,
И когда мы представили свое решение и показали, что нет никаких отклонений в плане безопасности судна,
this was accepted by them.
это было принято.
And this is important to have such a dialogue and such involvement of ideas.
И это очень важно, иметь такой диалог и вовлечение в идеи.
Everybody who's in the operation of fishing vessels know that every item that you put into it needs to be maintained over the lifetime of the vessel.
Все, кто обслуживали рыболовные суда, знают, что любое оборудование, которое ставится на судно, с течением времени необходимо обслуживать.
So by doing this, we were not only saving an investment of, let's say, $200,000,
Таким образом, мы не только смогли сэкономить инвестицию для заказчика, пусть скажем, $200 тысяч,
but we were also saving class needing to inspect it on a regular basis.
Также избавили регистр от необходимости инспектировать это оборудование регулярно.
And we were saving our client from future revenues lost in maintaining this and keeping it to such level that class would continuously approve this emergency generator.
И также освободили судовладельца от необходимости поддерживать это оборудование в рабочем состоянии для того, чтобы его одобрял регистр в будущем.
Because we already have other two generators in the vessel that we are constantly using in the vessel.
Поскольку у нас есть два других генератора на судне, которые мы постоянно используем.
And an operator of a vessel will keep those because they are critical to the functionality of the ship.
И оператор судна будет их поддерживать в надлежащем состоянии, поскольку они критичны для работы судна.
So this just demonstrates how open they were for an alternative solution.
Это показывает, насколько открыт был регистр для альтернативных решений.
Obviously, I'm not going to keep this as a big hallelujah speech.
Ну, конечно, я не буду продолжать, как только речь, состоящую из одних восхвалений.
Although I have to emphasize, I am actually quite happy with my experience with Russian class.
Хотя я еще раз должен подчеркнуть, что я очень доволен своими отношениями с русским,
And I want to thank
с
them
русским
to give
регистром.
me the opportunity to compliment them on a deserved compliment.
И я хочу
area.
поблагодарить за возможность сказать этот комплимент.
But we have ahead of us sometimes with other new buildings that will come along.
Но впереди, перед нами будут новые вызовы, связанные с новым судостроем, который у нас появится.
And there is a room for improvement
И есть место для улучшения.
that will improve my life, that will improve their lives, that will improve everybody's life.
Это улучшит мою жизнь, улучшит жизнь работников регистра, улучшит жизнь всех.
We at Nautilus, we have been working on the concept of PDSP/RKD.
Мы в Nauticruz работаем в концепте, что мы разрабатываем и ПДСП, и РКД.
Which is pretty much the same as I worked in the western part of Europe with other classification societies.
Это примерно соответствует тому, как я работал в других частях Западной Европы с другими классификационными обществами.
PDSP being the class drawings,
ПДСП – это регистровые чертежи,
RKD for the yard to develop.
РКД – это рабочие чертежи для верфи, чтобы строить.
Everything fine with head office.
С головным офисом все замечательно.
But when it comes to building the vessel,
Когда доходит дело до строительства судна,
we started to see maybe conflicts.
мы начали замечать некие конфликты.
Some supervisors were thinking they were working on the technical project versus RKD.
И некоторые инспектора думали, что они работают исходя из принципа техпроекта и РКД.
So they wanted to interfere and intervene with our RKD development.
То есть они хотели включаться и мешать нашему развитию РКД документации.
Until we got it cleared, this is RKD, not technical project. We have room for, what do you call it, elaborating on our design.
И пока мы это не смогли объяснить и не показать четко, что это РКД, а не техпроект, и у нас есть определенное пространство для углубленного проектирования.
So what I recommend is that it needs to be clearly communicated throughout the organization of RMRS, and that includes head office and all branches.
И что я хотел бы предложить, чтобы было очень четко донесено внутри самой организации регистра, я имею в виду между главным офисом и филиалами.
That if it's a PDSP, RKD document vessel, then stay away from the RKD development.
Что если документация разработана на основе ПДСП, чтобы РКД документация не одобрялась инспекторами.
We also identified a room of improvement in maybe speed of reapproving documentation or
Также
commented document.
Мы думаем, что есть место в улучшении в плане переодобрения документации.
Obviously, this hopefully will be solved when the online approval platform will be fully in use.
Мы надеемся, что это будет решено, когда платформа для онлайн-одобрения начнет работать уже по полной.
We participated in that, and we saw that this could be a huge improvement area.
Мы участвовали в этой программе, и мы понимаем, что это может быть очень большой зоной для улучшения.
Basically, you're not setting documents in and awaiting, not knowing what's happening by email or uploading, waiting for comments, but you are then in more direct dialogue.
То есть, что не будет, как сейчас, когда приходится загружать документ или отправить его по электронной почте в никуда, ждать какое-то время замечаний. Здесь будет возможность более прямого диалога с инспекторами.
So I'm looking forward when this online approval platform will be fully in use.
И я жду, когда эта программа онлайн-одобрения будет полностью в работе.
But until then, we might even suggest a possible alternative solution.
Но до этого мы можем даже предложить возможное альтернативное решение.
Basically a solution that I previously used with other classification societies.
Решение, которое я раньше использовал с другими классификационными обществами.
Everything directed to speed up the process.
То есть все, что можно для того, чтобы ускорить процесс.
And that is a placement of a representative of the designer inside the head office of RMRS. during the approval process.
То есть, возможно, во время процесса одобрения даже физически поместить представителя проектанта в главном офисе регистра.
Where the approval engineers have direct access to this person. If he cannot answer himself, at least he can contact his colleagues immediately in order to speed this up.
Чтобы инспектора регистра имели прямой доступ к этому человеку, и если на какие-то мелкие вопросы он не может ответить сам, чтобы он мог связаться со специалистами в офисе и ответить на них.
Another small issue that we identified as a possible improvement area.
Еще один небольшой момент, который мы нашли как возможная площадь для улучшения.
If a comment has been made to a document and it needs to be sent for a reapproval,
Если в неком документе было сделано замечание, его необходимо послать для переодобрения.
we need to make sure that the entire document is not going through a complete reapproval process, but only the commented areas.
Нужно, чтобы все были уверены, что весь документ не будет пересылаться для переодобрения, а только та область, в которой были изменения и по которой были замечания.
Basically, only address the changes that was requested or what was made.
То есть только относительно тех изменений, которые требовались или которые были сделаны.
The same goes for non-design related or critical errors in a documentation that has been reviewed and commented on.
То же самое относится и к каким-то замечаниям, вопросам, не связанным непосредственно с проектом, которые были в чертежах.
Like spelling, grammar or comma errors, as an example.
Ну, например, орфография, пунктуация, какие-то
That should
ошибки
not
такого
require
типа.
that we need to resubmit the document for approval.
Это не должно требовать того, чтобы необходимо было документ заново пересогласовывать.
Just some inconsistencies in interpretations.
То есть, возможно, где-то какие-то вопросы с переводом.
I want to also use the opportunity and try to go more into some core changes that I would hope to see.
Я бы также хотел использовать возможность и перейти к неким ключевым изменениям, которые я хотел бы увидеть.
And for that, I think it would be meaningful to have a historical review of the existence and the birth of a classification society.
И я думаю, что здесь было бы хорошо сделать небольшой экскурс в историю, откуда вообще появились классификационные общества.
I think it was back in 1760.
Я думаю, это было в 1760 году.
Underwriters, PI clubs, insurance entities needed to make sure that the vessels that were transporting cargo were safe and sound.
Тогда компаниям, которые страховали грузы, им потребовалось, чтобы была уверенность в том, что суда, транспортирующие грузы, безопасны.
And subsequently, an entity was established to make sure that the vessel that was transporting the cargo could actually carry that cargo and were highly likely to be able to go from A to B.
И тогда было создано некое общество, которое занималось тем, чтобы удостовериться в том, что судно действительно может перевести данный груз и доставить его с высокой долей вероятности из точки А в точку Б.
How is that important to what I'm saying?
Почему это важно для того, что я говорю?
Well, when you go through the rules, you can almost see leftovers of this era.
Когда сегодня читаешь правила, там и там можно увидеть следы из той эпохи.
Cargo vessel is still considered as a superior, all-inclusive category of ships.
Грузовые суда, они трактуются как некая более высокая, включающая в себя другие категории судов.
Of course, over time we have had other categories of ship, icebreakers, ferries.
Конечно, со временем появились другие категории судов. Ледоколы, паромы, танкеры, рыболовные суда.
But the fishing vessels are only a sub-paragraph in many of the class rules of RMRS still.
Но до сих пор рыболовные суда, они находятся в неком подпараграфе в правилах регистра.
Some of your colleagues, most of them in your IX club,
часть ваших коллег, большая часть из них в клубе
have
компаний
created a
классификационных
separate
обществ
specific chapter for fishing vessels.
создают отдельный раздел для рыболовных судов.
So I think that would be a good recommendation because the implication into design where fishing vessel, which by the way does not transport third-party cargo, but only the fish it catches.
И поэтому рыболовные суда, которые сами по себе не перевозят груз третьих сторон, третьих лиц, а только ту рыбу, которую они вылавливают.
Because we are constantly being hit in the head during our design process that yes, cargo rules apply in this area, this area, this area, but not this area.
Потому что нам в процессе проектирования постоянно говорят, да, правила относительно грузовых судов должны применяться здесь, 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 здесь можно не применять.
So this is just a kind suggestion that this could actually pave the road for improved work relationship in terms of fishing vessels.
И это просто предложение с моей стороны, что могло бы улучшить и упростить работу относительно рыболовных судов.
And mind you, I think fishing vessels are getting to be one of your biggest client base now.
И я думаю, что теперь рыболовные суда будут одной из ваших самых больших клиентских баз.
And I think they would deserve a little specific chapter in the rules.
И я думаю, они будут заслуживать отдельного раздела в правилах.
But, you know, I think this will approve over time.
И я думаю, со временем это само себя покажет правильным.
And then here is a favorite topic of mine,
А теперь моя любимая тема,
which is a little leftover still of the cargo vessel thing. I know this is not a class issue.
это тоже остатки от грузовых судов. Я знаю, что это не вопрос непосредственно российского регистра.
And I apologize for bringing it up here on the class venue.
И я хочу извиниться за то, что этот вопрос поднимаю здесь, на сессии регистра.
But seriously, this impacts us that are designing fishing vessels, that we need to comply with full set of principal marks.
Но серьезно, это влияет на нас, как на проектантов рыболовных судов, что нам необходимо ставить на суда полный комплект грузовых марок Примсол.
I know this is a flag state issue,
Я знаю, что это вопрос администрации флага,
but it kind of represents the kind of intertwined relationship between class rule and flag rules that I'm addressing this here at this convention.
но это также показывает на то, что в некоторых частях правила регистра и правила государства флага, они взаимосвязаны и взаимоувязаны.
Let's be clear on this.
Давайте здесь будем
To exclude fishing
открытыми.
vessels
Чтобы исключить рыболовные суда
from load line marks and just according to International Convention of 66.
из системы грузовых марок, и чтобы они просто соответствовали Международной конвенции 66,
Is not, and I repeat, not
это не, я повторяю,
gonna reduce the safety of the same vessel.
не ухудшит безопасность этого судна.
Not.
Нет.
Because you know it, we all know it that are in design. This is already taken care of in the stability requirements to such vessel.
Потому что вы знаете, что при проектировании это уже принимается в расчет при расчете остойчивости данных судов.
There is even a partial acceptance that yes, this applies, but still not fully.
Даже есть частичное принятие того, что да, это применяется, но не совсем.
For example, let's assume a vessel has been lucky and is full of his catch at an early stage.
Предположим, что судну повезло, и оно вышло в море и сразу полный улов взяло.
Very short fishing trip and he didn't use much oil.
Очень короткий рейс, и топлива немного было использовано.
The owner will be happy.
Заказчик, владелец судна будет счастлив.
Then the vessel sets for port for offloading.
И судно идет в порт для выгрузки.
And let's say he hits bad weather and icy storms.
И предположим, что началась плохая погода и штормы с обледенением.
And he starts to accumulate icing.
И начинается обледенение на корпусе судна.
That icing will bring the vessel, let's say, maybe down below North Atlantic winter load marks.
Предположим, что это опустит судно ниже североатлантической грузовой марки.
But don't worry, it will float.
Но не беспокойтесь, оно будет плыть.
Because almost every single fishing vessel in the industrial category today
Поскольку любое рыболовное судно современное в индустрии, которое работает сегодня,
has what I would refer to as a sheltered freeboard deck.
У него есть то, что я называю закрытой палубой надводного борта.
That means that we have another deck, well, which is waterproof, but like weatherproof.
Что есть еще одна палуба, да, которая не водозащищенная, но назовем ее погодозащищенной, брызгозащищенной.
So even if we loaded it over the Primsol marks,
То есть даже если оно будет загружено ниже примсоловской грузовой марки,
we on generality have about 2 or 3 meters still left.
то 2-3 метра все равно еще остается.
So sound and picture do not go fully hand in hand here, and I think this is an area for a kind of complete industrial review regarding fishing vessels.
И здесь звук и картинка немного не совпадают друг с другом, и я думаю, что здесь нужно пересмотреть эту ситуацию по рыболовным судам.
My last point,
Мой последний момент.
and it kind of represents why I have Alexei here, because Alexei is my right hand in many things and interpretation.
Он как бы также подчеркивает, почему Алексей здесь рядом со мной, поскольку Алексей моя правая рука по многим вопросам и также в прочтении правил.
Alexei has economic education,
У него экономическое образование,
but I think for the past 2-3 years, Alexei has become quite a seriously informed naval architect and engineer.
но за последние 2-3 года он стал серьезно погруженным в проектирование и морскую инженерию.
Because I very early identified that Alexei can read rules like I do.
Достаточно быстро я понял, что Алексей может читать правила, как я их читаю.
He's more advanced than I am, because he can read them both in English and Russian.
Иногда более продвинуто, потому что он может читать их и по-русски, и по-английски.
So when I read the rules in English, I always need now to check with Alexei, can you seriously check what it says in the Russian text?
Когда я читаю правила на английском языке, я иногда спрашиваю, можно сейчас серьезно проверить, что написано в русском тексте?
So, and we have identified multiple areas where, for example, in the English version, it says such and such should.
И мы нашли некоторые моменты, где, например, в английском тексте говорится, что там это может,
Or such and such is recommended,
или это рекомендовано,
or such and such is required,
или это требуется,
or such and such shall.
или должно быть.
But when we get to the Russian version,
А когда приходим к русской версии,
there might be a little wake of twist in words, small words.
могут быть небольшие изменения в использовании слов,
Because
вроде бы маленьких слов.
when you're designing, you read the rules, but you also read what is not in the rules.
Когда ты проектируешь, ты читаешь правила, но также ты читаешь то, чего в правилах нет.
You read the rules from front,
Читаешь их с
You go on
лицевой
the back,
стороны, с обратной
sideways.
стороны, сбоку.
and now we need to check what does it say on the Russian version.
И также нужно проверить, а что сказано в русской версии.
And we have found differences.
И мы находили разницу.
But anyway, this was constructive
Ну, это было конструктивно,
points.
конструктивные моменты.
The future is bright for fishing vessels.
Будущее яркое для рыболовных судов.
It seems that we will be having increased application for quota on the keel.
Есть понимание, что, скорее всего, у нас будут новые заявки на квоты под киль.
It will be increased workload on our friends in class.
Это будет увеличенная рабочая нагрузка наших друзей в регистре.
Either you have to boost up with people, or you become more effective with digital platforms, automation.
Или придется набирать больше людей, или нужно будет быть более эффективными в использовании электронных платформ, цифровых.
But in general, RMRS and Russia is totally on the right path.
А в общем, и регистр, и Россия в целом полностью идут в правильном направлении.
So thank you for your time and thank you for the opportunity.
Спасибо за ваше время и возможность.
Спасибо, Alfred. Thank you, Alfred.
Thank you,
Continue
Alfred.
our discussion with regard to law online. Долгая дискуссия. Мы продолжаем с Альфредом общаться. Может быть, мы
We will
придем
continue
в ближайшее
working
время
with Alfred on this, and maybe we will reach some solution on the load mark quite soon. Maybe we will have new rules on load marks that will have all the load mark requirements removed from them, and a separate document will be dedicated to the load mark. Thank you. And now I'd like to give the floor to our Turkish colleague, Shakir Erdogan. Welcome to the floor.
Dobry din. Dear friends and dear colleagues, thank you to Seafood Expo organization, and especially thanks to Russian Maritime Register of Shipping for inviting us here. We are very glad to be here and representing Tersan Shipyard from Turkey, but I'll also take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Turkish shipbuilding industry. It's fair to say that we are one of the shipyards in Turkey that have been working with Aramarest mostly. Our cooperation lasts for more than 20 years, both for new building projects and also for repair vessels. So it has been a good cooperation. We have known many friends. We have had good cooperations, and I'm glad for that. Thank you. My father is a retired Lloyd Register surveyor also, and I know the challenges of being a class society. To be a ruler is not so easy, and it's not as you sit back and make the rules and just make the people do it, but it has certain responsibilities and challenges and risks, so we are grateful for their services. So I'll start with, I'll not take much of your time. I know that it's approaching the happy hours, then I don't want to be the bad Turkish guy, so I'll take a quick tour so that we'll go as easy as possible. Just a small feedback about Turkish shipbuilding industry. Since Turkey is surrounded with 3 seas, at the 3 coastal lines, one can imagine that it has been a maritime country historically. Our first shipyard was established in the 14th century, and many of its stones are still remaining. The physical stones are still remaining in this location. And as the Turkish shipyards, we are putting more bricks on these stones and to improve ourselves and provide much quality services to our customers, to the shipping community. Yeah, the location slide is here just to highlight that it's not only the south part of Turkey, it's not Alanya for the Russian people, but also come to our yard for our shipping activities. So among the shipyard activities, since we have this huge coastal line, we also have other maritime facilities and activities around our coastal line, including 468 different facilities, including marinas, container ports, and others you may have. I guess every private-owned, profit-oriented company has the same values, but we would still like to highlight that customer satisfaction has always been our superior focus. And needless to say, customer satisfaction, of course, comes together with the punctual delivery times and high quality, and especially when it comes to shipbuilding and ship repair. Furthermore, among these highlights, the research and development is also plays an important role in this industry. So we have to be creative and solution-oriented, as we have always been towards our customers. Tersan Shipyard has been one of the first shipyards to establish a R&D team in its in-house facilities and expanded it since then. So we are very welcome to listen to our customers as well for their new solutions, new ideas, and combine them with ours. Some figures. as a presentation should have. We are, this is combined, so although I'm representing Tersan here, I take the liberty to talk on behalf of all industries. So this is, you could consider our total figures of 700,000 tons of steel capacity per year, 4.6 million deadweight of new building capacity, and 25 million deadweight and repair maintenance capacity. So, maybe needless to mention, but we are very much as the Turkish shipyards, very much focused on the niche type of projects. Despite this slide shows rather conventional vessels like cargo vessels and tankers, it's fair to say that we are very much focused on niche vessels, custom-made and tailor-made vessels, which includes fishing and aquaculture utmost. And some commercial figures. So despite some instability throughout the years, it's obvious that Turkish shipbuilding industry has been an increasing demand trend. These figures are based on the exported value of the ships exported to worldwide countries. And we expect that we will reach $1.5 billion within this year. Our position in the worldwide shipbuilding sector is overall, although we are not in the top 10 still, due to the, as you may imagine, the huge capacity vessels that are built in the overseas, and since we are rather concentrated on the niche projects and custom-made projects, despite Turkey is not in the top 10 overall, you can easily see that it's the world champion in the fishing vessels, new buildings currently, and the top 5 countries for the tugboats, and among the leading shipbuilders for mega yacht and ferry segments. So when I have mentioned about building niche projects, these are the type of projects that we are referring to. This is of number of employees, also goes along with our increasing revenues. I guess this is the same in every shipping facility or shipbuilding sector, but just wanted to give you an overall picture of our shipbuilding process and to highlight that we are focusing on the design and planning periods in advance of the physical start of the project, which gives us rather good advantages and benefits throughout the building process afterwards. This graph shows Turkey's export to the worldwide countries. For the time being, Norway, as you can see, is in the top of the list, but you could say Russia is second, since as we all know, Marshall Islands stands for many other countries, how to say, a common flag for some reasons that we all know. So Russian is a very important market for us, obviously, and we have a strong demand to increase this cooperation even further. To showcase our range of products, we would like to highlight some projects. On the top, you see an advanced offshore supply vessel with triple redundancy concept. On the second, it is the LNG, 100% LNG powered fishing vessel. And at the bottom, you can see the passenger vessel with high battery capacity. So it would be really a shame if I didn't mention any green energy or decarbonization. So it is worth to mention that Turkish shipyards and we as Tersan had huge experience building renewable energy operated ships. which stands for instance, this ferry is 100% electric operated, operates only in battery, no fossil or other types of fuel are used. As Alexander mentioned in his good presentation, this is one of the future power energy sources, and on ferries, such battery applications are the best fit. On the bottom, you see a 100% LNG fueled live fish carrier, and in this one, the fuel is 100% LNG with IMO Tier 3 solution. As my colleagues in RMRS also mentioned, the importance and the future trend for IMO Tier 3 vessels. And this vessel complies with this concept as well. I'll go back once and also mention about the passenger vessel, which holds a huge battery capacity of 6,500 kWh, which is currently the most that is installed on a vessel, and it is being installed on a vessel built by Tersan Shipyard. I'm proud to say that, and the vessel is now on 3 trials as we speak, and hopefully performing well. So these are some of the future fuels or future energy solutions that we are already applying in Tersan and in Turkish shipyards. And we are very much ready to welcome the new challenges and the new energy sources that will operate on the worldwide vessels. So some of the highlighted projects that we built in Tersan with Russian Maritime Register of Shipping. As I have mentioned, we have a long-term partnership with Russian class, and they have a branch very strong branch in Istanbul, and the surveyors and all the team in Istanbul have high competence and very much helpful, and we are able to carry out any and all types of inspections or approvals, so whatever you may call in terms of a shipyard and class society goes well and as planned. So we are thankful for their good establishment in Istanbul. So these are some highlighted projects. On the top, we will go have more detail. And these are the projects ongoing with, again, RMRS, super trawlers, as you may call, for oceanic float, and another one for Pacific Fishery Company. So these are the ongoing projects. And I will just touch on the projects already delivered. This is Zenit. You have seen this vessel several times before. My good colleague Nikolai also mentioned about this project built and delivered from Tersan, and we get the feedback that she is operating very well, and she is also a jewel in our portfolio. This is a super trawler, again designed by Skips Techniques, our long-term partners. It's a super trawler, 108 meters, delivered and operating in Far East Russia. This is the vessel that is soon to be delivered to Oceanic Float. Again, another super trawler, 108 meters in size. And sea trials have been finalized, and she will be delivered in a short period of time. So this is all from me and Tersan. I will not keep you long. So considering that Russia is also surrounded with seas and having a lot of experience in maritime industry, both in terms of shipbuilding and ship operations and everything you may have, we believe and trust that there's an opportunity to share ideas, share experience, and increase our cooperation even more. We are ready for that and hope that is a solution to come in the future. Thank you. Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. Dragan. Спасибо большое. Очень интересно.
It was a very interesting and positive report, dear colleagues.
Часть, связанная с докладами,
The part related to the
подошла к концу.
presentations and speeches is over, so
Самое время
it's just the right time to ask any questions
Любому из докладывающих здесь,
To any speaker,
если они есть у вас, мы
if you
готовы
have any questions,
общаться
we are ready to
и
answer
постараться.
and to have a discussion.
Пожалуйста.
Вопрос по докладу, где
The question about related to the report,
матобеспечение, которое создается
the related to supply, describing the supply
как
procedures,
задается форма корпуса,
how the hull structure is designed. It was not described at all.
Да. Семен, подойди к микрофону, пожалуйста. Можно включить микрофон?
Switch on the microphone, please.
Слышно? Отлично. Форма корпуса на данный момент
The shape of the hull is designed with the help of units. You have to click the interactive window, and the coordinates and the criteria are corrected. And knowing the information that was entered before, you can design the external hull shape, but interior part is much more simple to work with. When this software will be improved, are you planning to sell it, or
в рабочую, так сказать, сферу в проектной организации?
do you plan to use it in the design companies, in the design organizations? Of course, it is planned.
Когда Семен делал доклад,
When Semyon
прозвучало, что это
was presenting his speech, he mentioned that it will simplify our life. First of all, we consider that the main users of this software will be the dockyards and design companies. That's why within testing period of this equipment, we have already invited everyone to try to work with this product. And one of the reasons why do we postpone this full start of the software application to the next year
это то, что мы
is that we want
больше проектов физически было
the
в эту программу.
biggest possible number of the projects to be introduced in this software. We want to perform all the possible calculations and correct any possible errors. Starting from September, the period will start when we will offer the software to the companies, and we will develop these projects within the software, and when we will make sure that the software is working efficiently and correctly, it will be provided
Очевидно, как бы, что
to everyone for application.
совсем бесплатно, наверное, не
Of
получится.
course, it's obvious it will not be free of charge, but we are not going to get any big profit. The main task is to simplify our life.
Коллеги, еще какие-нибудь вопросы?
Colleagues, any other questions?
Стародубов, Вадим, Форстехнологи. У меня тут два вопроса.
Vadim Starodubov. First question to Kazimir. The module ship's designs was presented. If I understand correctly, this module will allow any player to check what is the status of project approval, what is the amount of documents, what's the number of documents provided by the designer, what's the scope of document that was already approved. Will it be the open database, or will it be available to each and every designer? There is still a confidentiality problem, and if the designer will allow the third parties to get this information, then the access will be provided. But still, we need to stick to commercial secret rule, and this document is a part of commercial secret. It simplifies the work with a particular customer if the customer is willing to provide this information to the third party, to another organization, this access will be provided, but it's not free, it's not a free access, it's not available to everyone. It's a commercial secret, and we have no right to disclose it. But still, for the development of the design market, some information shall be opened. What's the scope of documents that is submitted by the design company for the approval? I think these numbers, at least, would be good to provide. And the second question, Odyssey software-related question. It's not clear what's the market niche of this product. It was claimed that this product helps to check the rules of the register, and I could not find out if the designer has downloaded 100 documents on the site of the register. They were automatically processed, downloaded into your software, and you perform the checks. Or will there be a team of designers who will be converting the PDF documents into the model, or shall the designer just buy this software and provide the model to you instead of the drawings? In this case, it will simplify the work of register inspectors. Otherwise, I don't see how is it going to simplify the work of the inspector. He's going to check the drawings and build the model, both. I will try to answer your questions. Let's have a look at the current situation. Any processing, any designing process starts with the set of the codes and rules when the design is calculated with the help of the software of the designer. Sometimes they use Excel sheets and calculators and just do the prepare draft documents where they consider the thicknesses of the plates, of the sheets, and the bulkheads. Now it is done manually, we can say, using the softwares which are available at the design company. Afterwards, these calculations are submitted to the register together with the drawings of the hull structure. So the calculations are a separate document, separate from the drawings. And we have to check these two separate documents. This set of this software, on the basis of the documents, allow to perform the calculations, defining the main dimensions and also calculate the strength of the structures. And this information shall be used when designing the, when preparing the drawings of the hull structure. Now, when these calculations are done, these checks take less time than the time spent by the designer for the calculations on the basis of their own local software. Especially our foreign clients who are not familiar with the register rules and who face these rules for the first time. For such companies, calculations take quite a long time, and it is one of the most complicated stages of work for them. So there is a misunderstanding because the main players of the classification societies, our colleagues have this kind of softwares already, and they use it efficiently, and we were the only exclusion. And we have performed this huge work. Now we are at the testing stage of the software, of the product, and we believe that this is
внедрение цифровых
a
технологий.
significant step on introduction of digital technologies in our practice. It simplifies our work. We first do the calculations on the hull structure, and after that we start drawing, start making the drawings. I'm sorry if I was not very clear, if my explanation is not so obvious and clear. I will try to rephrase and ask my colleagues to comment if it's not clear to you. So it would be right to say that this is a software for design bureau mainly, not for register. This is a software both for design bureau and for the register. Then we are expecting for the sales, start of the sales of such product.
Hello. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Сергей Коковин.
My name is Sergey Kokovin. I'm director of IT department of Nautic Cruise Company.
У нас примерно такие же
We
программные обеспечения.
have similar softwares, very similar to Odyssey software, and it's approximately same. Our data are saved in the open databases, and I have a full access to these databases. Can I transfer, upload this data with the help of some application? Can I transfer it to you so that you could download it into the Odyssey software? And this is how we would skip this paper step, the paper documents and PDF format documents. We download the model, you see it, and we do the calculations. The question is there any application, API, and where we can see these documents?
Я просто начну отвечать, давайте так скажу.
I will start answering this question.
Философия, как бы, вообще вот этого программного обеспечения.
The philosophy of this software and the register approach is that it is just one of the tools. No, nobody is trying to cancel the way your previous work format. You can continue working in the most convenient software. And there was a question, is it for classification society? Yes, it is for classification society. If you will forward us the calculations in the format that was provided in the past, then we will calculate it. But this type of calculation will be much easier to check for us. That's the main idea of this complex, of this software. If you will enter the data immediately, initially into this complex, then the probability of complete compliance of this data with the register requirements is 99%. And the approval process will happen almost immediately, we can say. And we all believe that the vessel is designed in compliance with the register rules, and there are no surprises for us. You mean if you will use Odyssey software? Yes, this is clear. But if colleagues will use their own softwares and send it to us as a digital file, that was the question, yes. It's quite clear. The way when you use Odyssey, it's clear. It's not a problem. But if we have different softwares, we can use the same software, but convert the data into your format.
Есть ли описание вашего формата, и можно ли его к вам загрузить? Вот в чем вопрос. И где эту документацию можно найти?
Да, спасибо за вопрос, очень интересный и важный.
Yes, thank you for this question. I will now try to add to what my colleagues said. As for the volume of documents that are to be provided, it is something that has not been discussed in great detail yet. And of course, any changes here, if they happen, the decisions will have to be made later. This is the first comment. And all the rules and regulations aimed at introducing this software This is something that's being postponed until the last year, the next year at least. As for
передачи данных из других программных продуктов,
data transfer from other software
мы об этом думаем.
to the Odysseus, that's something that we are thinking about, but before really looking into this issue, we need to first finalize, create a final version so that everything works correctly within our format. Because format conversion and data conversion, including the hull, this is something that's done manually now, and we are thinking how, as a certain upgrade in your version, how to adapt that text data generated by Dialog Statica and NAPA in order to streamline the hull parameters transfer. And also, we will start thinking about transferring a larger scope of information from similar software, maybe from the computer-assisted design systems, but that's something that we are only starting to look at now. As an overview, now it's not available, but that's something we're considering. The last question from me. Okay, you are thinking about it. Now, I just learned about Odyssey because I am here at this forum. I didn't know about it. You will think about it, but where will I learn about your results, the results of your thinking? Can I subscribe? Can I get subscription for the news? The register website, and it talks about Odyssey there. Yes, it does. I'd like to add, if I may. Sorry, I missed the name of your company, Naughty Cruise. I'd like to say that we sent a request to Naughty Cruise. Yes, we offered this software to be tested by different companies, so Naughty Cruise was online. Not audible. Question not audible. We got the data. We got the testing data. There was an official letter. It's being worked on now.
Does this work? Yes. Don't ever forget the name Naughty Cruise again. And I would suggest that you will actually open your arms towards our IT genius, Mr. Sergei Kokavin, in order to find a solution of a platform or a data transfer from one entity to another. I think that would be basically the best solution, because we cannot wait and think about it. We have to act, and I think you will find that Sergei is quite prominent and quite proactive in maybe solving issues that might take you some time. So that is a proposal from the company that you will never forget again, Naughty Cruise.
We never forget Naughty Cruise.
Oh.
But of course it's possible, I think.
Just a little comment. I'd like to mention that we now are deeply focused on completing the stage of development, the current stage of development, the product, and then we, without any doubting, will be focusing on the integrating or transfer the data from the other products to our.
Maybe ask you to assist us with this process.
Sure, that's what I was offering. And I think you will find that we are quite capable in this because we've been working with similar kind of transition and transfer of data into software used by 7A. And I think you will find our IT genius, Mr. Kokavin, being quite helpful in these areas. So you're free to use him as much as you can.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, we'll keep in mind your proposal.
Коллеги, еще какие-нибудь вопросы, предложения?
Colleagues, do you have any other questions, proposals, comments, criticisms?
Хорошо, конечно, конечно.
Yes, of course. Nikolai Nazarenko, Cesarka. I'd like to make a comment, not as much talking about Tilenius's presentation. I am the professional with 40 years of experience in the industry as a captain. I saw different situations in my ship and also from the bridge. I saw vessels on the brink or even beyond the brink of what's safe to sail. And I have a request. Please leave the load mark where it is. Mr. Tilenius has been in Russia for 4 years. I'm not sure he has been able to really feel through this issue. This is one of the tools that makes it possible to ensure safety of navigation. This is something important for Russia, and I hope that you will take my comment into account.
I hope I may reply to this, and trust me, I understand what you're saying, and I would never suggest anything that would risk lives or safety of a vessel, and I'm a sailor myself. I'm not only a designer, I've been on board vessels, basically started sailing when I was 15 years old. But since you're a captain, you know also what you're talking about is the interaction between draft and stability of the vessel, which is two different things, but sometimes common. Whether I'm located in Russia or somewhere else in the world, we have the same kind of set of rules, basically rules that were defined by, on one hand, the old guy Archimedes and the other one Newton, and basically I think we have the same kind of what do you call it, gravity acceleration here. So I think we would be operating on the same set of physical laws, no matter whether I'm in Russia or in anywhere otherwhere in the world. I understand that you have some extreme weathers. I understand that completely. But what I'm talking about is that on a fishing vessel, we are talking about maybe, if you look at the difference between summer load line and a winter, North Atlantic winter load, we are talking about 300 millimeters. And I'm not talking about that we are having the upper deck as a freeboard deck. We are actually talking about having deck 1 as a freeboard deck, which is basically, I never understood why people are operating with second deck as a freeboard deck. Because then you have a complete whole deck above that, which is closed. And you know that as a captain, obviously been studying stability and such, and also something called form stability and intact stability. These are not the same things as load line marks. So trust me, and don't ever think that I would be doing something that would risk the safety of crew and life and welfare of sailors, because they are my brothers.
Well, I think we have run out of questions and comments. So let me thank all of you for finding time to come to our meeting. I would like to invite all of you to Niva. We will have More extensive reports focused not only on the fishing vessels will discuss many fascinating things, and I do hope to see all of you on NIVA soon. Thank you.